Right. Hi, Carolyna. Good to have you
Hi.
here.
Yeah, thank
Um,
you. Good
so
morning.
welcome to the Joyful Life Project.
Thank you.
We were just talking about what that is a few moments ago, and I'm not going to go through it for the sake of this video, but um, do you want to take just 30 seconds and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Um, well, I'm 77 years old,
Nice.
and so I might be the oldest one you talked to. I don't know.
Well, I've spoken to my mother, and she's got you by at least 10.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right. Okay. um, I don't know what you mean by tell me about yourself, about as far as like the three P's go, or my personal life, or
Yeah, just who the heck are you?
who am I?
Who the heck are you?
Okay.
I mean, we don't have to get into the philosophical version of who you are, but just,
No,
you're
thank you.
77.
Yeah, I have two grown children and
Nice.
seven grandchildren and two
Oh,
great
wow.
grandchildren.
Wow.
But, I had nothing to do with that. And they bring me some joy. And I also was an artist for 30 years.
Oh, what kind of art did you practice? Or
And mostly I did everything. Watercolor, which I taught for quite a few years.
oh, neat.
And yeah, it was fun. I called it Watercolor for Cowards. Brought them in.
I think that had I come across that, I might have signed up. It's the for
Yeah,
cowards part that might have interested me.
right. Because
That's a
people
neat
are,
idea.
I can't paint.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I've done all kinds of art. And I got introduced to the principles um, back in the 80s. And I was lucky enough to see Sid Banks.
Oh, cool. Right.
But I was sorely depressed. And Annika Hurwitz kept sending me these flyers about it. And I threw them away because back then there was no internet per se. And I was in such a state that I finally said, "What is this?" Anyway, long story short, I learned about it in an intensive, and I went on to teach it as a parenting class for 5 years.
Wow.
And that was really joyful. I really loved doing that. Then I moved and I kind of got away from all of that, but more into my painting and sculpture and all that kind of stuff. That kind of was my life for a while. And
Super cool.
yeah, and then I got back to the principles again. And I'm teaching again. I've got a class coming up soon, and I'm very excited about that. I did one in October, and it was really fun.
What is the class going to be focused? I mean, just in a nutshell, right? Because this
Yeah,
is
just on
a
parenting.
conversation. Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Back. Right.
yeah,
Nice.
with
Nice.
using the principles and especially deep listening. That seems to be the hot button for them to learn.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you obviously know who Jack Pransky is, and I'm assuming you've read
Mm.
his books on parenting as well.
Yeah, and I've worked with him a little bit. Yeah,
Oh, nice. Yeah, me too. He's a good
yeah.
guy.
Hmm.
Okay, cool.
That's me. Oh, I'm
Yeah, no,
married.
that's awesome. Well, and I think it's prudent. Let's say a few words, I guess. The one of the things that I was hoping is to get a broad demographic for these sort of interviews.
Mm.
So having people at different ages with different experiences, either principals or not, and to have that as part of our
Hmm.
little intro and bio, it was fantastic.
Hmm.
So, you ready?
I'm ready.
Question number one.
Yeah.
What does living a joyful life mean to you?
um, it means really being happy with myself and what I'm doing,
Hmm.
listening to what I need to do in that moment and really paying attention to that. And it could just be simply asking myself, do I want tea or coffee? And
Hmm.
listening to that. It's simple things.
Hmm.
And it's also, of course, talking to my grandchildren. There's a new one that's 2 years old, and that's really fun. Um, I love being out in nature. Sometimes I get almost to the point of semi-raptured looking up at leaves and trees. I just love doing that. Um, I love teaching the principles. Um, I love talks with my husband, these unexpected talks. We'll be sitting at the table and there's nothing we have to do. And I'll start a conversation. The next thing I know, we've had like a 1 hour,
Right.
really deep, wonderful conversation. And it just feels really good. I love it.
Oh,
Yeah.
super cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
I love I love the way you describe being out in nature, being, getting close to rapture. And that
Yeah.
really resonates for me as well. There's something very special about sort of being out in nature and not to put words in your mouth, but for me, it feels like recognizing that you're part of it. Part of that rapture is that sort of embodiment that there's not as much distinction as we might see with the naked eye. But I wanted to ask you something about the first few things you said. What I sort of heard there is that part of living a joyful life is being able to be in the moment. You said sort of whether it's tea or coffee, the simple things. Can you say a little bit more about that?
It started when I came home from the hospital it was a house I had to stay in from my depression, for 2 months. And I came home and I was in my kitchen and I said, oh, I want a cup of tea. And I thought, do I really want a cup of tea? And it was the beginning of knowing that I had to ask myself, what do I really want? And and it was the beginning of also just, I don't know, it's hard to explain, recognizing the feeling that comes with that.
Right.
The yes that comes with that. Sid Banks says, what fills you with joy, do more of that, something like that.
Yeah.
So I'll ask myself a lot, do I really want to do that? Or am I just doing it to please somebody or to be with the group or because I'm supposed to? And I try to pay attention to that, and it leads to more joy. Yeah.
So how do you determine, so this is fascinating. It's something that I've been playing with a lot lately. How do you know it's the right thing to do? Like, how do you know whether it's tea or coffee in any given moment?
By the feeling I have.
So say more about
that. If I say I want coffee, no, tea's better, because say I want tea, I say to myself, I'm going to get a cup of tea. And there's just a settled, inside of me. But I go, but you really should have coffee because you need the energy, those kinds of things. There's a feeling of a push inside of me, like you're pushing something towards something you don't really want. Does that make sense?
I think so. Is there more to add? Like there's a push towards what you want, or
just an easy flow.
Okay. So it's almost a push away from what you don't want.
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how to articulate it
No,
either.
I like the analogy of, you're either going with the river or you're pushing against it, and the feeling of the two things, the dichotomy of that. So,
how do you, so when it starts to feel like you're going with the river, what is it that tips you off that you're actually going with the river as opposed to creating the illusion that you're going with the river?
I don't have a lot of thinking about it.
There you go.
Yeah. I'm just doing
Nice.
it. Yeah.
Nice.
There was one day it wasn't particularly, maybe it was hot. I live in Florida, but my pool gets cold. Surprisingly, people don't think it ever gets cold, but it gets cold. And I just had this thought, I want to jump in the pool. And I didn't allow myself to think, but it's going to be cold, because I never would have done it. I just went, okay, jumped in. It was great. Yes. It's the thinking about it that causes me the problems, the hesitancy, the stopping, maybe this isn't right. Yeah.
Yeah. When you were talking about the tea or coffee, you used the word but, right? Well, it's tea, but I think I should.
Yeah.
And it seems like that but is often, if there's a but, that seems, at least in my experience, to be an indicator that maybe you're starting to look in the wrong direction. You're looking away from the feeling of it and falling into sort of the intellect of it or the analysis.
Right.
Super cool. So I'm going to move us along, because it sounds like already we could have a long conversation about this. So the second little question, or maybe it's not a little question, but what advice would you give to someone who desires to live a more joyful life?
Pay attention to what you really want, and notice the feeling behind that. Is it a new feeling, or is it an old feeling that something you may think you still want, but really you don't? So there might be a new answer to that question. What do I really want?
Yeah, I like that. How are you able to, let's say, the differentiation between old thinking and new thinking. How do you see that manifest? How do you see the ability to discern the difference between the two?
Sometimes I have to stop and really pay attention to it, bring consciousness to it. And I don't do probably enough, but I will ask myself, do I really want to do this? And kind of getting a little bit lost with that. There's just a nice feeling with it. And there isn't with the other. It's an old habit feeling, like, right. Everybody's going to the play, I should go because I want to be part. It doesn't really feel good sometimes.
So I'm going to add a part B to that.
Yeah, I'm not sure I answered that well, so go ahead.
I think you did, and there is no right or wrong. But how? So in keeping with the advice, what advice would you give someone to help them distinguish between sort of the old habitual thinking and what's coming up as new thinking? And yeah, I'll leave it with that. Like for someone who's caught in the habit. Okay, how do we break out of that habit? How do we start to move our, I don't want to lead this.
I keep coming back to the feeling. That's why I'm having trouble, I think, with this. Yeah. Recognize they are habits. That's, I think, number one. Right. And old conditioning. My mother used to make lasagna in a one of those oval blue enamel turkey pans. So when I got married, I made lasagna in an oval blue turkey pan. I thought you were supposed to, and then one day I went, I could make this in a square pan. But my awareness came to it. I just was following an old habit of what was conditioned in me. And so I kind of woke up to that. And it was like, duh. No more round corners. Right.
You know what? I think that's a brilliant place for us to stop, actually, Carolyna. That's awesome. And we're pretty close to, I don't know, 10 or 12 minutes. So, for those people that are watching this, I hope there's value here. They are spontaneous. There is no right or wrong answer. And Carolyna, thank you so much for joining. I'm going to, I'll pause the recording and then we'll take a second.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, no, this has been awesome. Thanks so much.